Hi friends, and welcome back to another It video, because this is what the people want. So today, as promised, I'm going to be doing an It predictions bingo. Here's my really ugly bingo sheet. This is primarily inspired by Jenny Nicholson. She did one of these for The Last Jedi. She's my favorite YouTuber. So, It predictions bingo. Basically in each of these little squares, I have a prediction for It 2 of things that I think are gonna happen, and we're gonna talk about them today. If you didn't know, because you haven't seen any of my other It videos, I've read the book like multiple times, so these predictions are based off of things that happen in the book and things that happen in the trailer, because now we have physical material to base thoughts off of, which is very exciting. So without further ado, let's get into my ugly bingo sheet. Okay, and also spoilers beware for the second section of the book, aka the second movie. I'm gonna say things that are going to spoil plot points if you are unaware of them. So, spoiler alert. If you don't care, or you've read the book, or you've watched the miniseries, keep watching, let's go. I mainly say that because my first one is very spoilery. Opens with Stan's death. So, people have multiple theories about, like, how the movie is gonna open, because the last movie opened with the whole Georgie thing, and then they had, like, the shot in the sewer where it had, like, the It movie logo, and it did, like, the spinny thing, and so a lot of people think that they're gonna do that again. And what happens with Stan's suicide is that, like, he slits his wrist, and then he writes It on the wall in blood, so I think that that's gonna be the opener of, like, the little title sequence, if that makes any sense. And that also leads into my next box, because that goes off of the other main theory of how the movie is going to open. My second box is Mike's house scene is where we get most of, or all of the kid flashbacks plus Adrian Mellon. So, a lot of people think that the Adrian Mellon sequence is going to be the opening scene, and I disagree with that. For this reason. For a while, I thought that was going to be the case, and judging by the trailer with the shot of the balloons under the bridge, which is what happened in that scene, we are going to be getting the Adrian Mellon scene. Adrian Mellon was casted. So I think that the scene in the book where everybody's over at Mike's house and they're all exchanging stories because they're getting their memories back is where we're going to see most of, or all of, the kid flashbacks, because that's where the Ritual of Chud stuff is in the books, which we know we're getting in the movie, and so I think all of that and the Adrian Mellon sequence, which Mike tells them about in that chapter, are all going to be in that scene. It's just going to be kind of a back and forth of them telling stories and going into flashback mode, and so that's why I think they're going to put the Adrian Mellon sequence there, especially if they want to highlight the similarities between Adrian Mellon and Eddie Kasprak. The way that Eddie reacts to that, to Mike telling about the situation, is big proof that Eddie is a homosexual. More about that in my other video, Every Single Reddie Moment and It by Stephen King. Go watch that if you want to hear more about that. But that's why I think that that's where those things are going to be located in the movie. My third box is no Hansel and Gretel. I talked about this briefly in my trailer breakdown video about how, considering the way that they set up the Mrs. Kirsch scene in the trailer, I don't believe that they're going to go through with the whole her house transforms into like a candy Hansel and Gretel house. I was kind of looking forward to that because I wanted to see what they did with that visually, but I think that because of the way that the trailer was edited, that seems like it's going to be the majority of the scene with a couple other things edited back in. And we're not going to get the Hansel and Gretel thing. Instead, we're going to get the creepy, scuttly stuff we saw in the trailer. So, my fourth box is more Henry racism / Henry versus Mike. So, a big man versus man conflict in the book is Henry and Mike, or more importantly, like, the subject of racism, because in the book, the children's section takes place in the 50s as opposed to the 80s. That's also a big fear of mine regarding this movie, because now it's going to be taking place in 2016, and I think that's going to give them the opportunity to make a lot of cringy jokes. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it keeps its timeless nature. Judging by the trailer, it looks like Derry is staying kind of timeless, so that's really good. But going back to this, Henry and Henry's family having problems with black people, and primarily the Hanlons, is like a big thing that was centered a lot in the book, like Henry killed Mike's dog and a bunch of other stuff, that it's like the reason that Henry was really so focused on the losers was because of Mike, and I feel like they kind of missed that in the first movie, but the directors and writers have come out and said they're gonna do more about the controversial aspects of the book in the second movie, and I think that that includes focusing more on the racism, because despite the fact that they changed the timeline and the first movie took place in the 80s, there was still a lot of racism in the 80s, despite the fact that it was after the segregation era. It's still something that they can focus on, and I hope they do that. Okay, my next box is No Patrick Hockstetter. So, Patrick Hockstetter was in the first movie. He was one of Henry's goons, had the long black hair, died very quickly into the first movie, which I thought was very interesting because Patrick Hockstetter was a more primary character in the book. He had an entire backstory because he was basically a sadistic psychopath who murdered his little sister, and his death scene in the book was also a lot cooler, because it was in the part where Beverly was spying on the Bowers gang, and then basically Patrick got eaten by leeches, and it was really awesome. But because of those things and how they're not really going to line up with the movie timeline, I don't believe that Patrick is going to be in this movie at all, and I don't believe that they're going to bring back any of those stories. My next box is Spider Pennywise. I've also talked about this briefly in my other two videos, how Spider Pennywise is like the big final battle enemy in both the kids section and the adult section. The miniseries did an interesting thing where they had the kids fight Clown Pennywise, and then they had the adults fight Spider Pennywise, and so I think that that's the route that the movie is going to take, considering that they had the kids fight Clown Pennywise in the first movie, because they really wanted to focus on the clown. I think I've mentioned this before, but the movie and the miniseries have both focused a lot more on the clown form of Pennywise, as opposed to in the book, where he's just kind of like the physical manifestation of evil, so he takes a bunch of different forms, and the clown is just his favorite, but it's not really a clown horror story. So, because of the fact that they took the clown as the primary enemy in the first movie, I believe that the final battle is, in fact, going to be with Spider Pennywise. I also want to comment on that because I have this little Funko figure, and this is a little Pennywise from the final battle in the first movie, and it is Pennywise with spider legs. So this is when he's like stabbing at Mike. Yeah, those are spider appendages, and I think that that's hinting towards the fact that his final form is going to be a spider, and we're going to get the spider battle that we all deserve. Okay, this next box is a controversial one, and it's one that I want to have down here because I want to go in not expecting this to happen, so I'm not as disappointed when it most likely doesn't. This box is No Reddie Kiss. So I have a whole video about Reddie. I've mentioned that already, so if you're a Reddie shipper, go check that out. You have all the Reddie information there from the book. But if you do not know, in Eddie's death scene, when he is dying in Richie's arms, Richie kisses him on the cheek. And it's like a really substantial action because it's very like not platonic the way that it's communicated in the book, and is a lot of reasons why people use it as Reddie proof or Reddie evidence. But I am gonna go in expecting the worst, and I think that it's not gonna happen. And I've started thinking this because of the way that the trailer was built up, how, like I said, how they moved Eddie behind Beverly instead of behind Richie where he's supposed to be, how they're not holding hands in the Ritual of Chud circle, just things that don't really add up that worry me. So that's one of my predictions. My next box is Leader Mike plus Mike Gets to Battle. This one is kind of obvious because Mike was shown in the trailer with the other losers in some of the ending scenes where they are in the sewers. In the book, Mike gets injured and spends the entire last battle in the hospital, so the 5 remaining losers have to go battle Pennywise on their own. I think that Mike deserves a spot in that battle because I think that he is the true leader of the Losers Club and not Bill, and I think that they're going to highlight that more in this movie, considering that he is the reason that all of them come back to Derry, and he is sort of the newfound leader of the group, considering all of Bill's insecurities and being back in Derry. So I think that Mike is going to take on the leader role that he deserves, and he's going to charge headfirst into the battle, and it's going to be amazing because we love Mike Hanlon. Okay, so my next box kind of goes after what I talked about a little while ago, but that it's lack of tech / timeless Derry. So I think the fact that they change the timeline of the first kids section, to take place in the 80s, was absolutely jumping on the Stranger Things hype train, because this movie came out the same year of Stranger Things Season 2, and they were definitely fueling off of that excitement. They wanted to focus this in the 80s. They could have the 80s music, the 80s merchandise. You could have the crossover of Finn Wolfhard being in both of these 80s Stephen King-esque things. I think that was a smart marketing decision. However, like I said, it worries me for the second installment, because now, instead of the adult section taking place in the 80s, the adult section is taking place in 2016, which kind of opens up a lot of doors that we never really faced in the original timelines. Like, why didn't they just friend each other on Facebook? Obviously, there's the curse installed where they don't remember each other, but it's kind of a weird veil where Stephen King never really specified the rules of that curse and what exactly they could and couldn't remember, especially considering how the book opened. I think that the fact that that technology is more implemented in this current timeline could be problematic, but I think, definitely judging by the looks of the trailer and just the Stephen King feel in general, how everything feels kind of timeless and vintage, I think that Derry is going to be like this town that is just still like stuck in the 80s, so when they go back it feels very old and it feels very like they never left, and I think they're going to try their very best not to have things like cell phones. I'm very scared of Richie making like millennial jokes and stuff, but let's just hope that they stray away from that and keep with the vibe of the book and of the Stephen King nature. Alright, then our next box is Ritual of Chud plus Turtle are pretty book accurate. So we've gotten confirmation that the Space Turtle and the Ritual of Chud are going to be in this movie, which is very, very exciting. The whole turtle situation is kind of weird, like, even for, like, somebody who's read the book and for a lot of other people. It's just sort of an awkward concept. So I really hope that they execute that well, and I hope that it translates well to a cinematic adaptation. But that being said, I think that and the Ritual of Chud are going to be pretty book accurate, especially because they've said they want to bring back some more accurate book stuff in this installment as opposed to the first movie. I'm really excited for the Ritual of Chud because I think that was a really significant scene in the book that they didn't address in the movie. However, I think I've said this before, but I'm not really sure. I'm worried about the whole approach of the flashbacks with the kids because of the whole way that the first movie was set up and the fact that they split these movies in two, that the kids was like the first installment as opposed to everything happening as adults and the kids sections being flashbacks initially like it was in the book and in the miniseries. I think it's going to be kind of strange watching the movie and getting stuff with the kids that happened during the first movie but we didn't see, because that means the first movie was not a complete story and there was more stuff that happened regarding this specific situation over these couple of days that we did not see. And I think that's kind of strange, and I'm really hoping that they're able to tie it in well enough so that it doesn't feel like missing puzzle pieces when you go back and watch the first movie, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so now we have a more optimistic Reddie box. We have more Reddie dynamics due to Finn/Jack plus audience response. So this is kind of vague, but it's very clear that Reddie is, like, huge in the It fandom, and Reddie is very publicly huge. Like, Finn and Jack are both very aware of it. For the most part, there have been no problems regarding them. There are some sort of out-of-line shippers who bring it into real life with Fack and all of that. It's not okay. They're underage. They're children. Stop. If people still do that, stop it. But, like, Reddie is not, like, a secret thing. Like, people know about it. Even, like, full-grown adults who are fans of the book and don't ship it at all, like, they still know about it. So I think that because of this and because of the great response that they got in the movie, because of the actors' friendship and because of the way that they conveyed Richie and Eddie in the movie, I think that the directors and the writers are going to try to have a lot more Richie and Eddie interactions in their adult forms, because now they are fully grown, and it's not like the awkwardness of like, oh, should we be shipping children? Even though for most people it's not like that. I think that they're going to take advantage of the fact that they are adults now, and they have these really charismatic actors, and they've gotten this response from the first movie, and they're going to put that forth in the new one. Alright, my next box is a different end scene, parentheses, no Bill and Audra. So in the book and in the miniseries, the story ended with Bill sort of riding off into the sunset on Silver with Audra, and I don't think I think they're going to have a different scene. because I think focusing on Bill and kind of making Bill the protagonist after all the shitty things he did in the second installment would kind of miss the point, and I think the last scene of the movie is going to be something with all of the losers together, because I think they really want to, like, put forth, like, the ideas of, like, friendship and loyalty and all that stuff in this series of movies. So that's my cup of tea. Alright, last row, we've got a box over here that says Eddie lives with his mother. I've expressed this before in my previous video. I think that they're going to take the miniseries route and that Eddie is going to be living with his mother and he's not going to be married to Myra. I think Eddie being married to Myra brings up a lot of controversies and conflicts that never really get resolved in the story. The fact that he was definitely guiltily roped into this relationship, the fact that he married her because he reminded her of his mother and she scared him because of that, the fact that he felt obligated to get into a relationship and get married and have children and all of these things that very much aid the fact that he is closeted, but I think that by putting Myra in the movie they might interpret it the wrong way, but I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that because there has been a no casting about Myra. So I think that they're just going to go through with Eddie living with his mother, considering there is only one scene in the book where he is at home, and I don't think it would add much to the story for him to be married, especially considering the way that they portrayed him to this point. Alright, we got another Eddie box right here. We've got Eddie death scene has kid parallels. So this makes me really, really sad to think about. I think this came up as a Reddie theory originally, but I'm gonna broaden that a little bit more, because a lot of people were saying that what if Eddie's death scene, because it is so incorporated with Richie and because Richie is such a huge part of the end of Eddie's life, that they're gonna have parallels with kid Richie and Eddie. And that just breaks my heart if that's even a possibility. But I'm gonna broaden that a bit, and I think that Eddie's death scene is going to integrate flashbacks of him with the losers as kids, just to pull on your heartstrings just a little bit more. And I also think that that's like a good possibility of there being kid flashbacks in a part that is not incorporating it into the story, like when they're at Mike's and they're talking about stuff that happened to them as kids. I think there's a good possibility of there being something like that integrated for emotional support while Eddie's dying, because that's a really substantial scene, and that's more vital to the plot than Stan's, because Stan's death kind of happens before the fact and not after everything that happens after the losers reunite. So I think that is a good possibility. Next box is kind of obvious as well, but it's Beverly Endgame. So in both interpretations of the story, whether that's the book or the miniseries, Ben and Beverly have ended up together. There are some differences, like for example, that in the book, Beverly had an affair with Bill, and in the miniseries, Beverly had an affair with Ben, which was way more appropriate considering Ben was not married, and Bill was married. He's in a very happy relationship with Audra, who is a wonderful, wonderful woman and does not deserve the cheating scumbag that is Bill Denbrough, and that's the tea about that. But moving on, I think that they're going to stick through with the fact that Ben and Beverly end up together and Bill is going to go back to Audra, despite the fact that they had a lot of things centered around Bill and Beverly's romantic relationship in the trailer. I think that they're still going to keep the ending. And then my last box is lots of Bev. So, judging by the trailer and also by the fact that Jessica Chastain herself is playing Beverly Marsh, and the fact that she's friends with Andy Muschietti, who's the director, and she's been in another movie of his, I think that Beverly is going to be very centered in the adult plot, which is very, very exciting for me, because Beverly was probably my favorite character in the adult installment. Eddie was absolutely my favorite in the kid installment of the book, because I think that his solo chapters were so interesting, but I think the opposite in the adult chapters, where I think Beverly's solo chapters were the most interesting. I think that her relationship with Tom Rogan is just so, like, complex, and I think that they're gonna do a really great job with that. The guy that they casted as Tom Rogan is perfect. Like, he looks just like I imagine him. So I think that because the fact that Jessica Chastain is playing this leading role, and that she is the only female primary character, I think that she's going to have a lot of screen time, like she deserves. Alright, so that is my whole bingo sheet and my predictions for It Too. If I come up with any more, I will probably do another video closer to the release of the movie, and I'll definitely do a review of the movie once I've already seen it. I am definitely planning on going on opening day, whether with friends or by myself. I will be there Thursday night when it comes out. So share with me your predictions down below if you agree with any of mine. If you disagree, I would love to know. Let's chat. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!